Welcome to the Fuel, Move, Recover podcast. This show is a complement to the content found at advancingathletics.com. We welcome you into the FMR family, but remember the topics we discuss are not clinical recommendations or medical advice. Howdy, everyone. Welcome to the Fuel, Move, Recover podcast. This is episode 5, and it is Fuel Week. My name is Michele Iono, and I'm joined by my teammates, Alex Uding.
Hi, guys.
And our author for the week, Lindsay Malone.
Hello.
As you all know, this podcast and all things Fuel, Move, Recover are funded by our members over at advancingathletics.com. And we really appreciate all of their patronage and are happy to have you as listeners or members. And we take it seriously, just like last week, having Family Week, we take it seriously that you guys are like a part of our team or our crew. So we like to go around and see how everybody's day is going. So Alex, are you drinking anything, and how's your day going?
For once, I'm drinking something. I have Dick's Mountain Amber Ale. It is from Centralia, Washington. So West Coast beer. It's pretty tasty. And my day was good. Trying to think. I did a lot of content work, so a lot of time in front of a computer, which I'm not used to, and so that's draining in its own kind of way. But then a friend came over and we got to catch up, so that was nice. How was your day, Lindsay?
My day was good. I am not drinking anything. Well, I am drinking something, but I am drinking a grapefruit sparkling water. So I'm feeling a little parched today. So I feel like I need a little extra water. If I was drinking something grapefruit, though, it would be Ballast Point Sculpin. Have you had the grapefruit Sculpin? It's
That
really
is a good one.
And I'm not like a fruity beer kind of person, but it's really good. So if I was drinking something, that's what I'd be drinking. So yeah, my day was good. I did a little bit of work. I actually learned all about eggs today, which is crazy, more than I ever knew before about mobile chicken coops and how it impacts eggs and their nutritional value and soil. So we'll have to save that for an article because it's a whole big topic. So good day, great weather here. Michele, how about you? You're back from vacation.
Yes, I'm back from vacation. My tank top collection has doubled, so I have options now. And I am drinking actually something from New England, a Narragansett lager. So they are like one of Alex and I used to partake in them. It's really tasty, like cheap beer. And I'm definitely like a hipster when it comes to like beers and coffee and stuff like that. So rather than drinking like Bud Light, when I lived in Texas, I drank Lone Star, which of course is owned by Budweiser, but whatever. And now Narragansett. Narragansett is one of the oldest breweries. It started in like 1820, whatever. And they can't have the claim for like oldest brewery because they didn't brew continuously. There are some times where they didn't, but it's really tasty. And they just started distributing out here in Ohio. And my brother picked me up some, so that's what I'm enjoying. And my day to day was good. Like Alex, I worked on a bunch of content, just to not always be super rosy and be a little vulnerable. It was a little bit annoying because I'm trying to work on some content. Well, I'm trying to finalize some of our coaching packages that you all, the listeners and members, will be seeing shortly. And I think I'm trying to be too perfect. And so I'm even though I'm in my focus blocks, I'm trying to get them done. And I'm having a really hard time of staying focused and getting them. So like I showed Alex today, I had 2 pages done, which is pretty much to completion, but it took me a whole damn day to do it. So I kind of struggled with focus today, and we are remodeling in our house. And so there's people walking around. And so there's plenty of excuses for me to be unproductive. And So, but I was able to persevere and finish that. So that felt rewarding. And then I went for my noontime run, and I did 2 workouts yesterday. So I was kind of tired today. So I tried to practice what I preach and take my foot off the gas a little bit. So that was good. And my good friend Nick called me while I was finishing running, and Alex knows he's a jibber jabber like I am. So that pretty much ended the run. And then I worked out in the garden with my niece. So that was nice. So our garden. I'll send you a picture. Maybe I'll post it on. I'll use it as one of our things for social media, so all the listeners can see. I'm sure they're really interested in seeing these huge plants that we have. So, but whether you like it or not, you get to see it because I'm the one who puts everything out. So, yeah. But like we were talking about with what were we talking about before the show started? I remember now. So,
just the absence of sports and how that feels.
So, let's talk about that a little bit because people don't hear this miserable shit, from the news enough. So let's hear it here. Right. So no, but it's just that like Alex and I both played sports in college. I played football and Alex played soccer. Lindsay, did you play any sports?
No. I mean, basically I did sports in high school. Actually, I was just talking to my husband about this. Organized sports, I've never been good at like team sports, which sounds horrible to say out loud. Like I feel like I'm a good team player, but actually like the coordination of team sports it was never my thing. But I could run literally forever. So I've run like once I found running, I think I've run like 22 marathons or something like that, like between halves and fulls, because to me it's more fits me better, and I feel like it's something I can excel at more than like a team sport.
I think sometimes we forget like individual sports are sports.
Yeah.
Running is absolutely a sport, and it is super challenging, and they're just totally different dynamics. And so it does, because they don't tend to attract the same crowds. I think sometimes we forget like how athletic and amazing these individual athletes are, like runners, swimmers, golfers, tennis players. Like it's just amazing.
But yeah, I feel like I've always had an appreciation for sports. So, I went to Xavier undergrad, and the year that we were seniors was one of the farthest they've ever made it in the NCAA tournament. So that was, I feel like basketball was huge there, and the whole town, was between UC and Xavier, big basketball town. So I feel like it's always been a part of my, life, but it's just so weird that it's missing. And we have, our son loves sports, so he'll find these random games on and be watching them. And it's so funny to even just see like how the uniforms have changed, and, the people that are playing that are now like announcers, that were like
that's
playing.
crazy.
So, but it's definitely a strange time. I'm excited for so baseball is going to be starting up, and whatever happened with the NBA, are they continuing their season?
Yeah, they are. They start, I think, in August or at the end of July as well, and they're creating essentially a functional bubble where they're having all the teams in one location. Right now, the location is Orlando, and
like Disney World, right, or Disneyland, or one of those.
Yeah, Disney World, and so they are going to take a different approach. I mean, it's also easier because I think there's the same amount of teams in baseball as in the NBA, but there's certainly less players. A full roster, I think, is 15 guys. Whereas for baseball, a full roster is 25 guys. And they have guys moving back and forth all the time. Whereas the NBA, that rarely happens. So it's a lot easier to control because of that, I think, it seems. So, and plus, also, the nice thing about basketball is that the thing that you use, the court, doesn't get abused by games, essentially. So you're able to, play games as quickly as you get people off the floor, essentially. Whereas that's obviously not the case with football or baseball, or even hockey, I guess, because the ice has to be, reshaped and reconditioned and whatnot. So from my understanding, it just takes more time. It's not as much time, but more time. So, but yeah, I just, we all have such an interest in society in general, but certainly I was meaning specifically the three of us, such an interest in sports that, it's just that we really see what they mean, what sports means to our society. And it's such I guess microcosm maybe is the right word. I'm not sure what the exact right word is, and how it represents so much positivity, and there's a lot of, there are some negative aspects, but there are a lot of positive attributes that you can take from sports, and it's meaningful to a lot of us. And and I wasn't good academically. I did not excel at all. And in high school and in the beginning parts of undergrad, and sports was really my anchor. It gave me the thing to like try hard at school. Otherwise I wouldn't have tried hard, I don't think, because I wanted to play college football. So I worked hard so I would be eligible and that I would be able to get into college. It'll be really nice once things coming back. And also I think it'll be a good example for our country of just like, we're going to start something and then we're going to try to figure it out. And then we're just going to go from there, because we can't predict everything. So if we wait until we know everything, we'll never start, and just figure it out. So we're
That's
treading
a good
into,
point. Yeah, I mean, it's almost like they could be in the standstill forever, or they could just, start and see what happens. So yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting.
So to the topic at hand, today we are discussing Lindsay's article about fueling for better movement and recovery.
This article was about, how we move and how we recover in all aspects of our life and our day. So whether that's, thinking about your workout or your job or, playing with your kids or whatever it is that you want to do in the day, how do you fuel to support that activity and the recovery as well? And so, a couple things that come to mind with this. The first is, really sort of being prepared and thinking about how you want to feel. And I think this is sort of a common thing that we all do, around food, is we think about, how do I feel right now? Which, you do want to explore that as well. Like, am I hungry, and am I really hungry? Or, using the hunger scale, or thinking about, what you have on hand. But also those, feelings of, am I stressed, or, you know, uh, are there negative or positive emotions, and eating because of those emotions, or what, smells good or sounds good in the moment. And really, you also want to be thinking about how you want to feel. So just like, you might be getting ready for, work or a run, and you're gathering like what you need for that, whether it's your clothes or your badge or whatever, you're preparing, you're getting all that stuff out because you're going to need those things. And food should absolutely be in that same bucket of like, what do I need to get done these things today that are on my list? So, is a bowl of sugary breakfast cereal going to fuel my best day and all these things that I have to do? Or is something else going to be a smarter choice to help me sort of be my best in all of those things? So, you want to think about, how am I going to feel when I'm done eating? Not just 5 or 10 minutes later, although that is important, but an hour or two later, or, when you're on your run, or when you are at work. Do you want to feel like you have energy? Do you want your clothes to fit well? Do you want to feel strong and rested? All of those things, I think, are things we don't think about, but we should when we're trying to decide what we're going to be eating or what we're going to be packing for the day. And those questions, really do set the stage for what exactly you're going to be eating.
We have our first comment here. If you're not a member, you can join our squad here by signing up at advancedathletics.com. We have a couple different tiers And we would love to have your comments, questions, concerns, thoughts, and ideas to be added to the show. Curtis says, "Good morning. Sorry I'm a bit late in posting." Curtis, don't worry about it. He goes on to say, "I am very active and a busy family man with 3 young kids. I like the thought process on eating how you want to feel later. I know this feeling all too well. I'm a big Powerade Zero drinker. I've been told by my nutritionist they are fine to drink. Can you elaborate a little more on this? I feel like I get dehydrated in hot weather working, my body locks up with cramps. No matter how much water or Powerade I drink, nothing ever helps. I'm 320 pounds. How much should I be drinking?" So there's a lot to unpack there. Lindsay, maybe you can, I know we talk about hydration a little bit later, but what do you think about his choice?
I really do not like beverages with artificial sweeteners like at all. And that's outside of even electrolyte containing beverages, but artificial sweeteners that would be in Powerade Zero and Gatorade Zero, um, and I think those are the 2 main zero-calorie sports drinks. They can change your gut bacteria, so they can actually do more harm than good. They may influence your blood sugar and your insulin levels, and cause you to have sweet cravings on the back end. So lots of research there that is not positive. So a long time ago, we sort of gave them a free pass because they were 0 calorie, but now we sort of know better. So the food industry hasn't quite caught up with that yet. So that's the first thing I would say. I don't like the 0 calorie, artificially sweetened drinks. The other thing is Powerade and Gatorade do not have enough salt to be really the best source of an electrolyte beverage to rehydrate you and bring your serum sodium levels up, the sodium in your body fluids. And that's just because they're really designed more for taste than for efficacy. Now, I'm sure I'm never going to get an endorsement from Powerade or Gatorade because of that, but they just aren't the right. They don't contain the right amount of salt. The other thing to think about here is that you do actually need some carbohydrates to create a solution that is really quickly absorbed. So what is ideal is a beverage that is similar to your own body's fluid in terms of carbohydrates, sodium, sometimes potassium might also be included. Actually, ideally, potassium should be included. And when it's similar, your body can absorb it really quickly, and therefore it's going to hydrate you a little bit better. There's more science there, but that's the very basic way to look at it. So better options. There's one called Hoist that I really like that comes already prepared in a bottle. And I want to say CVS is the place where you get it. There's a handful of major retailers that carry it. So that's one. The other, and I think we might have talked about this before, Liquid IV is another good one. And they are going to have a little bit more in terms of calories than zero. So Liquid IV, I think, has 50 for 16 ounces. But it's also going to hydrate you better and hopefully help with the cramps. The other part of this is that, what are you eating the other hours of the day, which is part of, this article really setting the foundation. So fruits, vegetables, beans, nuts are good, are good sources of electrolytes too. So not just in the moment, but you really want to make sure that throughout the day you're packing those good nutrients in, and that can also help, with your electrolyte status.
He needs to think about what he's doing the day before.
Mm-hmm.
And, and it's kind of like it might be too late. So maybe because he's overweight, I'm assuming he's overweight, this nutritionist might be focusing on the 0 calorie aspect, encouraging him to choose beverages that are low calorie or I guess no calorie, but he's using it as a tool, a reactive tool, a reactionary tool, instead of as a prophylactic, which would be, or a proactive thing, which then it becomes ineffective. So I think that would be something that Curtis should think about too, is that the recovery, quote unquote, he's really just getting foobarbed by his difficulties with these physical days and hot weather activities and whatnot. But he needs to think about the smaller but accumulative effect of not recovering from his day-to-day routine, whatever that is.
Right. Yeah, and when it's happening, drinking more water and more Powerade, which again does not have enough sodium in it, can actually then further dilute your sodium and potassium and make the problem worse.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So in terms of how much to be drinking, there's a couple different ways to look at it, but all of those would be starting points. So think of anything that I say now from here forward as a starting point that then you sort of um, go up or down based on your own experience. So what I would say is, looking at starting with maybe 2 liters of water. And if your urine is still dark, if you're still feeling parched, maybe your skin's dry, those are, signs of dehydration. I wouldn't necessarily use the cramps as a sign of dehydration, because you don't want to, again, drink more water and dilute your body's own sodium. But start with 2 liters. If your urine's still dark, if you're still getting those signs of dehydration, go up. So go up an additional, 8 to 16 ounces or something like that, and see if you can get to that sort of pale, dilute urine.
I think sometimes too, recognizing with cramping, like speaking only from like the cramping perspective, recognizing movement can be involved in contributing to that experience in terms of the shortening of a muscle and it not letting go, or the way you are moving that might be contributing to possibly overuse or underuse of another area. So paying attention to that as well. Certainly, I think nutrition tends to be the primary cause and contributor to cramping, but also kind of paying attention to how someone breathes, how they're moving when they're doing it, to see if also that's contributing in some capacity.
Then once you think about how you want to feel, then you can sort of get into the foundational principles of eating well for performance. So the first is that golden rule that we talked about in our Other Fuel podcast, eating real whole foods, not too much, mostly plants, staying away from, foods that our great grandparents would not recognize. And eating when you're hungry, and stopping just shy of being full. So again, that comes back to not just like, how do I feel in the moment? Because, it's very common to eat out of boredom, stress, fatigue, big one. And so eating because you're hungry and stopping shy of just being full. And then drinking enough water, which we, sort of touched on a little bit here already. Um, you know, Good rule of thumb, drink enough water to maintain pale, dilute urine. It's going to be darker in the morning for everyone because you've gone, hopefully 8 hours of sleeping, sometimes less than that, but you haven't drank anything overnight. So it's always going to be a little bit darker in the morning, but you should be drinking till you get to that point and then trying to maintain it. Beyond that, eating for good digestion is a really good, or eating for your gut is a good way to think about your foods, because the lining of your gut and the health of your gut are really going to ensure that you're getting everything that you need from the foods that you're eating. So that's protein for your muscles, that's vitamins and minerals to help with your electrolyte status and tissue repair and all of these good things. So the fiber rich fruits and vegetables, lots of bright color, those are the things that you want to eat 24 hours a day, so that when you are in that hour or two of your workout, or you're in your 8 or 12 hour shift, that you have what you need to complete, or optimize your performance. So after you set kind of that nice foundation, you really want to then think about these other things like timing. So, I like to talk about the foundation because I've worked with everyday athletes, professional athletes, tactical athletes, uh, and timing is a question that's brought up a lot when that foundational piece isn't quite worked out. So start with the foundation, and then from there, timing is a really nice way to improve performance and recovery. We talked about fasting before, time restricted eating. So, I'll just say that restricting your eating to, a 12-hour window, or sometimes even an 8-hour window, to have at least 12, maybe 16 hours where you're not eating, has so many benefits for cellular repair. So think about when you're working a long shift, when you're doing a hard workout, when you're trying to build muscle, you're doing some damage there. And this is a really nice way to boost the repair mechanisms within your body so that those cells are repaired and not damaged. So, getting to that muscle building and reducing oxidative damage, that kind of thing. Other things: stimulating fat burning, reducing appetite, improving blood sugar levels, stimulating your immune function. So in that respect, timing your eating where you have 12 hours of eating and 12 hours of resting and digesting, or even longer. Like I said, some people do 16 hours, can be a really good way to optimize your performance. And one thing I like to say about this is that, if we were to see these claims, like imagine an infomercial or someone coming on the Dr. Oz show to talk about all these benefits in this supplement, only to reveal that it's not eating at all and it's simple. We would all buy the supplement, but it's something that is really nice because it's not something you necessarily have to, track, or it doesn't take a whole lot of effort. It is difficult, but it's something that sort of simplifies things. So I really do like this idea of time restricted eating, especially for people working shifts who may have long hours anyway, that they don't have access to food, or maybe the only thing that they have access to is junk. We are designed to be able to fast, and it's something that you can sort of use to your advantage. So then we have timing of protein and carbohydrates. So we have our foundation, maybe some time restricted eating or fasting, and then we have timing of these macronutrients that our body needs in larger amounts. So with protein, really spreading out your protein. I like 20 or 30 grams at a meal as a starting point. Larger people, really muscular people, might need a little bit more, or if you're in kind of a heavy training phase, you might need a little bit more. But that's a good way to time your protein throughout the day to make sure you have enough for all phases of activity and recovery. But then also, if you're lifting, if you're doing some really labor intensive work, after that work, you want to try and get in some protein right after that. And that's going to make sure that your body has what it needs to repair those muscles and start building them back up again. So this is like 30 minutes is probably the best window based on the research. But if you can't get it right in 30 minutes, just do it as soon as you can. And that could be, a protein shake I like because it's just simple. And most people after a hard workout aren't necessarily really hungry. So a protein shake, right after, and then you take your shower, and then, maybe you have a bigger meal. So with protein, that's sort of the best way to kind of step up your game a little bit. And with carbs, really what you're thinking about here is when do you need the energy? So really low fiber carbs like grapes, pineapple, bananas, these are fruits obviously that don't have a ton of fiber. That energy is going to be really readily available. So fiber digests very slowly. It actually doesn't ever leave your digestive tract, but it causes everything to slow down. So if you have a really high fiber food before a workout where you really need that energy, it's really not going to do you very much good. So think about things like sweet potatoes or apples, oatmeal. These are, of course, very healthy foods. And if you're going to be having breakfast, let's say before a long shift where you need that energy to be spread out, then those absolutely would be good things. But if you're about to head out on a run, or maybe a workout where you need sort of like quick spurts of energy like sprinting or CrossFit or something like that, you want quick carbs that you can use kind of right away. So again, both healthy foods, it's just timing them when you're going to be able to use them most efficiently.
So that brings us to our next comment by one of our patrons, and Abby R writes into the forum just like you can and says, I have two questions related to this post. Number one, in researching a plant-based diet, it seems that there are a lot of great options for getting adequate protein. Is this protein the same as what can be found in a meat-based source? Two, what are your thoughts on juice or broth cleanses for resetting the digestive system and improving gut health?
All right, good questions. So with protein, so proteins, amino acids are the building blocks of protein. So all proteins are made up of different combinations of amino acids. And the difference between plant and animal proteins is really a difference of the types of amino acids. So and the variety. So animal-based sources would be considered complete. They have all the amino acids in the amount that your body would need them, sort of the optimal amounts. And I wouldn't just say meat there because you have, the things we traditionally think of like muscle meats, which sounds horrible, but when you think about eating ground beef or chicken breast or something like that, that's muscle meat. And then you have bone broth, collagen, gelatin, which use different parts of the animal, but also provide really nice amino acids. With plant sources, the key is getting a variety of plant sources so you get all of those amino acids. And so grains and legumes, vegetables, they're all going to and nuts and seeds, they're all going to be limited in one amino acid. So as long as you are eating a variety, you can get everything that you need. Now, sort of a side note to that is plant-based proteins are usually attached to some amount of fiber, right? So you have things, like I said, beans, nuts, seeds, grains. There's always going to be fiber there, which is going to slow down how quickly they're digested. So if you are looking for a sort of quickly or quicker digested plant-based protein, that's where some of these shakes come in, where they're a little bit easier to digest and you can use them a little bit quicker than, let's say, a bowl of rice and beans. I think mostly plants with some animal sources is what works for most people, but you can absolutely get what you need being vegan as well. So juice or broth cleanses for resetting the digestive system and improving gut health. I think it really depends on the person, but there could be a lot of pluses to doing something that is defined where you're resetting your you're resetting your tastes, your preferences, your relationship with food, and it's surrounded by this idea that you're going to be introducing these more nutrient dense, juices or broths. Resetting the digestive system, it can help, but if whatever you are consuming is good quality as well. So I'm not big on fruit juices, like a green juice. Cleanse might be good, but I think it really depends on the person. I mean, you also have, really good detox, a detox system between your liver and your kidney. So for most people, it's not necessary, but sometimes it's nice to have that, sort of symbolic and resetting kind of your relationship with food. Like I said, taste preferences, cravings, that kind of thing. And it can be helpful for gut bacteria if you have, some things going on. But again, it would probably just come down to the person.
I have a question, Lindsay, to add to that. Just because this is probably like one of the most common questions I get in the clinic or in the gym. And I think the world is so big in terms of there's a lot of options out there, and knowing how to navigate your options can be challenging. What should someone look at on the label for a protein supplement? Or what should they navigate away from or not get caught up by with labeling and things like that? Are there certain go-tos that you have recommendations for in choosing a protein powder?
Yeah, one, I always look for organic, and that like clears the playing field a lot. There's not a ton of organic protein powders, but the organic food designation covers so many areas. So it's pesticides, herbicides, treatment of animals if we're talking about, an animal-based protein powder, what those animals are eating. So it covers so many different things. So first I look for organic. Then before anything else, I always look at the sugar because, you know, the way that these powders, or these protein supplements end up is, some of them don't taste very good and then they're just masked with sugars or artificial sweeteners. So I usually look for added sugar and then I look at the ingredient list to see if there are any artificial sweeteners. The other thing I like to look for is um, the what is the label? I think it's NSF. I'm trying to remember what it is, but it's basically that it is approved. You may know better than I actually in this. It's approved for use for like professional and collegiate athletes. Do you know what I'm talking about? Is it NSF?
I don't know what the label is itself, but yeah, it makes sure that it is like third party tested so
Yes.
that it,
Free of like banned substances
yeah,
and that's a nice added layer because one of the things with supplements is that the company itself, and this is a surprise to most people. I think we have another supplement question coming up. The supplier, the manufacturer of the supplement, it is up to them to demonstrate that their product is safe and effective. No one is, they don't have oversight like drugs. So you want something that's third party tested to make sure that there's not steroids in your protein powder or heavy metals or wood chips. I mean, it sounds ridiculous, but uh, since there's not a whole lot of governmental regulation, you do want it to be third party tested.
yeah, it is NSF.
On their website, it says that this program protects consumers by testing for harmful levels of contaminants and certifying that supplements contain the ingredients listed on the label and nothing else.
So yeah, and then the other thing, I'm sure we all do this, whether it's like food or, supplements or whatever, is like, once you sort of done your research, sticking with the brands that you like, but always checking in because what can happen is you get a good brand, they've got, something that people like and that perhaps it checks all the boxes for quality, and then a larger company can come in and buy them, change it, and then keep the label. Hate that, but it happens all the time. So right now I love Garden of Life and Plant Fusion are my two favorite plant-based protein powders, and they're really good quality. They're both organic, they're both third party tested, and they taste good and they mix well. So, I think that also, even though, there are so many other reasons for eating, like it still should be, appealing to eat.
So I think that this brings up just a good point of it's important to have a healthy relationship with food. This is why the resets or the cleanses, quote unquote, can be useful more than the actual physiological benefit. And the other thing is that we don't want to sound highbrow here at Fuel Move Recover, but just try to think about what you're putting in your body and the benefits of it. Sometime we should have some myth busting regarding either some tips or if energy drinks are really good or bad. Another good one is we could talk about what really needs to be organic versus what doesn't, so you can save money. Some places, as a consumer, we are going to pay for this extra testing and care and stuff like that. And difference, kind of like what you're mentioning about the eggs, and like when to pay for things that are free range versus organic.
Yeah, that would be there's so much there too.
And I think
Yeah.
too, like we have to be responsible and we have to make good decisions, and certainly never want to put anyone out based off of saying like what's worth buying, what's not. That's a personal decision. But also I think sometimes we don't always look at our health as an investment when really it's kind of everything. We're good about bringing our car in every so many miles to get an oil change. We're good about replacing certain things. But we don't always do the same for ourselves when really our body is our vehicle for life. And so we need to make sure that we take care of it. And there are certain things worth investing into it. And I think certainly nutrition, wellness, exercise are things that can be in the background, and it's okay to invest in, because if you take care of yourself, potentially that's a hospital bill you are not paying for it later on. And it can add up. Health and wellness isn't always this immediate thing. It's a process. And so because we don't get immediate reactions or results, we don't always see how it's worth investing into.
And I think that to go along with that is, Alex and I are both drinking beer and you're drinking sparkling water. So whatever that costs is an additional value to our weekly, monthly grocery budgets. And yet, you go to the, let's say, the milk aisle, and then you might bitch about the extra $2 or $3 it costs to buy organic milk whenever you also have a 12-pack of, or even a 6-pack of some of these really boutique or local beers is like $10. So, it's just having an appreciation for our capacity to spend money on what we really choose or want to spend money on. Now, the final part before we move on is, all I'll say is that this is why you need a membership to Fuel Move Recover, and you can post your questions on here, and Lindsay will chop apart all of these different questions. Should I buy organic eggs or organic milk? Or I only have enough money in my budget to do one. What should I do? I'm just using that because we've already mentioned both of those things now. But the whole point is we're here to help. We understand that people have budgets and lives and families and schedules and all these other things. So that's what we're here for. That is the crux of what Fuel Move Recover is for. So, because even tactical athletes are just regular people at the end of the day doing extraordinary work. So with that being said, why don't we move on to how fluids are properly timed?
Yeah, so this is a popular topic. We've gotten a couple questions about this, and if we're talking about sports, right? So you watch any sporting event, and undoubtedly you're going to see a sports drink commercial, making you think that that's all you should be drinking to stay hydrated. But in reality, those electrolyte containing fluids are really only necessary if you're working out longer than an hour, or if you're in a climate that's particularly warm, or your circumstances are such that you're sweating a lot, so you're losing, some of those electrolytes. Otherwise, water can work really well, and you even get some fluids and electrolytes from food. But if you do find yourself in the situation where you need an electrolyte containing beverage, as I mentioned earlier, Gatorade and Powerade and whatever else, whatever other common products are on the shelf next to those things, usually do not have the ideal electrolyte content for hydration. So I like Liquid IV, Drip Drop, Hoist. Numa is another good one. I believe it's a Cleveland company, and they have, I think coconut water is their base, which is natural liquid that has electrolyte. It naturally has electrolytes, is what I'm trying to say.
Another one I've used, Pedialyte, sits really well in my stomach when I
Yeah.
run long distances. So sometimes like I'll switch between like Liquid IV. If it's Liquid IV, I like for like my longer ones when I need a little more energy because it is higher in sugar. But
Yeah.
I like Pedialyte when it's not quite as intense, but it's just very hot.
Yeah, and Pedialyte came out with they have one that's not it's unflavored now,
Yeah.
and like no colors or anything. So yeah, and I think the key here is it should taste a little bit salty. Like if it doesn't, then it's probably just doesn't have enough salt in it. When I worked in the hospital, we would use a liter of G2 with a half teaspoon of salt to improve the electrolyte profile. Now, G2 also has artificial sweeteners in it, so not my favorite. But my point is, you do need the salt because that's what you're losing, when you're sweating, and so you want it to taste a little bit salty. So over an hour, or if you are finding that you are in a climate or a situation where you're sweating, profusely, that would be a time to get those electrolytes in. And because they do often come with carbohydrates as well, it's really not ideal to chug, the whole bottle all at once. You really want to be sipping it over time. There are some studies that show like, every 15 minutes or so, because that's going to help keep your blood sugar stable and also sort of replace those electrolytes with a good sort of cadence. Uh, so if you can, I mean, you don't have to get it down to the minute, but try and spread it out so that you're replenishing them, over time.
With that being said, we have another comment from Vinny A, and he says, I am an avid hiker and have recently gotten into winter hiking. However, I have struggled with staying properly hydrated, e.g., muscle cramps. That was proper use of e.g. I appreciate that. On hikes beyond 5 miles, even though, because e.g., I'll explain this in the next episode. I'm sorry. So I'll add it at the beginning. Okay. So on hikes beyond 5 miles, even though I add electrolytes to my water. Besides adding electrolytes, is there anything else that you would recommend in order to stay hydrated while on the trails? Thank you. Also, as a side note, Vinny had very flattering comments to say. He was very appreciative of your article, Lindsay, but I cut that part out. So I wanted to acknowledge his flattery. So
Great. Oh, that's nice. So I think this is very similar, how we answered the previous question, and that you really do want to look at a couple of things. So what are you doing when you're not hiking? So the day before, the day of, what are you eating? Are you staying hydrated to kind of set the stage for that hike? And then also thinking, this is something I haven't mentioned yet, but magnesium can also play a role here. And most people, even by conservative standards, do not get enough magnesium throughout the day. Now, magnesium is in fruits and vegetables, and theoretically, if you ate, 5 or more servings, you should get close. But a lot of people can benefit from either a magnesium supplement or an Epsom salt bath, which is a natural source of magnesium. You actually then would absorb it through your skin. So that if he was able to kind of take stock of what was happening the day before, the day of, his eating, hydration, during those time periods, and still having issues with the cramps, I might try one of those two things. Either a good magnesium supplement. I like magnesium glycinate. Magnesium oxide is probably what you'd most commonly find, but it's not absorbed very well. So magnesium glycinate or an Epsom salt bath. You know, Epsom salt probably is a little easier because you don't have to worry about how much or when to take it. You just take a bath when, you might even try the night before this, and then maybe the night of. It helps relax your muscles, but also would give you some magnesium as well. And then thinking about what Alex said, about movement, and are we sure it's electrolyte related? Could it be something about the way that you're moving or the muscles that you're using?
Yeah, I think immediately to acknowledging that it's winter, layering, I think becomes important in what you are wearing and how that affects your body temperature and your thermoregulation during the activity. So making sure that you layer well, because that's going to impact how much you are sweating and how it's coming off your body. And then also acknowledging the changes in breathing patterns potentially with it being cold out. If you're gaining elevation and things like that, that's all going to impact how you're delivering oxygen throughout your body. And so you want to make sure that when you are breathing, that it's moist still as the air is going into your system. And so that's where utilizing and obviously under the right conditions, I'm sure most people are doing this, but having a face mask, making sure the nose is covered, because that's going to help keep some moisture in as you're breathing in, could potentially help as well.
Yeah, and making sure to breathe through your nose so that you're not expelling as much moisture through your mouth breathing as well. And then just to circle back on what Lindsay said, this once again points out to the similar thing that we mentioned with the previous person, I think Curtis, in just that you might be fooled into thinking the activity itself is the culprit, but really it might be your preparation around that activity, the days leading up to, the week leading up to. So that can also be, especially if you don't have a very strenuous job and it's the winter, so you're not sweating as much on a regular basis. And so you're fooled into thinking that you don't need to hydrate, you don't need to use the same level of preparation because of the environment and the circumstances. So that's also just something to be aware of. Next, we have antioxidants. Lindsay?
All right. So antioxidants are something that most people are familiar with in terms of food advertising, right? Like we hear a lot about antioxidants or maybe in multivitamin, mineral supplements. But antioxidants really just are the protectors of your cells. So if you imagine oxidative stress from things like exercise or pollution or poor diet or cigarette smoke or whatever, that's all stress to your cells that can damage them. And antioxidants protect the cells and then also help repair them. So you want to make sure that the food you're including, again, 24 hours a day or, when you're eating, not just around your workout, include these really antioxidant rich foods. So vitamins A, C, and E, those are common sources, common nutrients that act as antioxidants. And then you also have phytonutrients, probably less well known, but as powerful, like lycopene in tomatoes, curcumin in turmeric, beta carotene. Lots of different, there's hundreds of different types of, probably thousands really, types of phytonutrients that can help set the stage for protecting your cells and then repairing them after you've worked out or had a long shift or whatever. So making sure that you have a lot of color in your meals, whether you're eating smoothies or uh, making an omelet or a big salad, you want to make sure you have tons of color. So there are lots of good sources. I listed some of them in the article that are kind of the highest sources. So, fruits in the fruit category, you have things like berries and pomegranate. Also, things you might not think of, like dark chocolate, coffee, green tea. I think we could probably have a whole episode on coffee. That's one of my favorite subjects, but it can be a really good source of antioxidants. Um, Things like red cabbage, beets, beans. So making sure that you're getting lots of these colorful foods in your diet. It would be exact opposite to kind of the standard American diet where you have lots of like white bread and white rice and um, white crackers and again back to like breakfast cereals made with white flour, really devoid of these nutrients that can really help in that recovery process.
And that brings us to our next comment from Anthony P., who posted on the forum asking or saying, I love this article as I look to add things to my diet. I drink a gallon of water a day, and some of these items I already eat. I agree with one of the other comments, and I am also curious if I should add the omega 3s to my daily diet. I also would like to know if Gatorade Zero would work as well for hydration during and after a workout. Should I make green tea at home or just buy a zero sugar type? Thank you for your time. So I think first of all, that's great that Anthony takes such an active approach in his diet. It seems like he really is making an effort. That's great to hear. I feel like we've covered enough about the Gatorade Zero. Lindsay, can you maybe speak to some of the store-bought options for green tea?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't really met a ready-made green tea that I like. I think you're always going to have more control if you can make it yourself. One of the things with green tea that really boosts the antioxidant content, besides the type that you pick out, which I'll mention in a minute, is brewing it for a longer period of time. And you really wouldn't know that from just a bottle of tea. So I like, looking at Japanese organic green tea, and you could absolutely make it in a batch if you prefer to have it kind of ready to go and iced. And sounds silly, but you really want to follow the package instructions because it's going to tell you how long to brew it to maximize the health benefits. So brew it yourself, look for organic Japanese green tea. And one thing you could do if you really, I mean, there's lots of different types. So you could maybe go to a place that sells tea, like Teavana, I think is what I'm thinking of, or one of the places where you can, like, they have a specialty tea shop. I think that's what I'm trying to say. So you can taste different types and see what you like. But otherwise, at the grocery store, organic Japanese is the way to go.
Is there something to leaving the bags in, like, let's say that you just made a tumbler and threw the bags in there? Is there any harm in just leaving them in there?
I don't know. I feel like, it would get stronger, right? The longer you leave the bag in there. But I think there's something to the tannins in tea, and those can bind to other nutrients. That'll be my homework for our next show. But
Okay.
tannins are compounds in coffee and tea, and they can bind to minerals. So I'll look that up.
Moving on to our last section, talking about healthy fats.
All right, so the last thing, talking about inflammation, which is a term I think we just hear so much about, but we all have some inflammation, and when you're moving your body a lot, you're definitely going to create some inflammation. It's a protective response that we sort of have to make sure we're on top of day after day, and diet's a big component of that. So one of the biggest components outside of eating an antioxidant rich diet is including omega-3 fats. So you have plant sources of omega 3s and animal sources of omega 3s. So if you imagine the wild fatty fish, like a salmon, right, as a really great source of omega 3, it's because that salmon is eating algae, which is the plant source that has all the precursors. And that fish is literally converting those building blocks into that fully formed omega 3. So you can eat either the plant sources and then your body converts it, or you can eat the animal sources and you have kind of this fully formed omega 3. So plant sources, algae is actually one of them, but also walnuts, chia seeds, flax seeds. Those are all good sources of omega 3s. And from animal foods, you have wild fatty fish and other animals that eat green plants. So grass-fed cows, eggs from chickens that are eating green plants, dairy from animals that eat green plants. So that could be cow's milk, goat's milk, cheese, yogurt, butter from those animals. Those would all be good sources of omega 3s. So you really do want to make sure you're including it with regularity, but sort of at a very basic level. If you ate 2 servings of wild fatty fish a week, that should give you what you need for omega 3s. If you're doing the plant sources, you probably want to be doing it almost every day, because again, your body has to then convert it into that same type that you'd be getting from animals. So I like to kind of mix it up and do a little bit of both, like add, walnuts to a salad, maybe chia seeds to oatmeal, and then, when it makes sense, having fish. So ordering fish, when we're out, or um, we buy a ton of wild salmon from Costco as well.
And that brings us to our next comment from Mike I. And he says, wow, what a article, Lindsay. Thank you. Thankful for all the powerful insights on dieting and exercising. Can never have enough. Staying hydrated enough with water so that your urine is pale is spot on and a great recommendation. I am curious on the omega 3s and if supplements should be the way to go, since chia and flax seeds aren't as common as walnuts and other types of fish. The other thing he doesn't mention is that walnuts are expensive as hell. Any thoughts? Are there other supplements you recommend taking, i.e., oh, look, there's the other one, i.e., e.g. Anyway, do you recommend taking fish oil?
Yeah, so I think in my clinical experience, we would test people for omega 3s to see if their levels were good. And so there's a test called the omega check, and it can tell you, omega 3s versus omega 6s. And you can actually see, where you are relative to your intake. And there's probably a lot of other factors at play there that, like genetics and digestion, all these different things. But it was really hard to have someone who was eating well enough and had all those other factors going for them that their levels were really good. So for most people, I would recommend an omega 3 supplement. And, the benefit of the a kind of a one-on-one interaction is that, I can sort of look at your history and see, like, well, what are you eating, and optimizing digestion and all those things. But for the most part, I think it could be beneficial. And then the question is, back to, supplements that are good, that are third-party tested. With fish oil, it is a notorious supplement for containing other oils, being rancid, all of these things that could actually be worse for you. So with omega-3s, there are a couple that I really like. So one is a brand called Pure Encapsulations, and they have a product called One Omega. And Pure Encapsulations is actually sister company to Garden of Life, the protein powder that I like, and their standards across the board are good. So it's a little bit more expensive of a fish oil, but it is third-party tested. Any research studies that I have done with omega-3s have used that supplement. So it's really high quality. So that's the one that I like. And I think it's absolutely something that most people could benefit from.
So with that being said, I think that we're probably at a good stopping point. We have a few more comments from some of our patrons, but we want to really try to stay nice and tight here with our time. So we'll probably end it here. But first, Lindsay, do you have any other concluding thoughts with your article or just in general?
Yeah, I think this article is really good just to lay out that you really need that solid foundation. A lot of the questions that we got were sort of a very specific in a particular event or time of day, and really making sure you have that foundation down and then building on it with some of these things. I think you can't go wrong. It may not be perfect, right? But I know that trying to be perfect, right, it just gets in the way of progress. So you may have to adjust a little bit, but I think this was a good starting point.
Alex, what do you think?
Yeah, I think this is a great article that just answers a lot of the big questions. And like Lindsay said, everything needs a foundation. And once the foundation's built, you can take off from there.
And for me, the biggest thought that I have is, well, two thoughts. One big thought is actually two-parted. The first thing is, just like Lindsay said just a second ago, is that, just start taking bites. One of my favorite sayings, a friend of mine, Chris, and I would say this to each other when I worked with him as a client. And, how do you need to eat an elephant? One bite at a time. So just getting started with something. Maybe you've found that you have a particular issue, and you can maybe just go from there, and just start making progress somewhere. And then you can, they have a saying in the Navy SEALs, shoot, move, communicate. Because if you stay in place, you're going to die. So, so start action. Start with something. Just start moving, and then you can tweak it and then go, which is great because that's what Lindsay wrote in her article to finish. Work, eat, tweak, repeat. So keep moving, keep working, and then you'll start to figure stuff out. Don't be overwhelmed by the tyranny of choice and the fact that there are a lot of options. Ask us questions. That's literally what we do for a living. That's what this platform is here for. That's what the members have access to us for. So that's what we are more than happy to do. We're sitting here at 10:30 at night having this conversation because this is how much we like doing this shit. Okay, guys? So that's the first thing. The second thing is that sometimes your nutrition is not the problem, or it's less of a problem than you think it is. There are two different people that we talked today about how it's very likely that their issues are, at least in part, if not mostly, actually the fault of what they do around their activities rather than the way they're fueling during the activities. So think about that too. Maybe you're not as bad off as what you think you are, but maybe you just need to rethink the actions around your activities. So with that being said, we'd like to thank you so much for listening. And if you want to submit your questions, comments, concerns, thoughts, and ideas to our show, we'd love to have you as a member. Remember that all of our memberships are matched with either shout outs like the ones you hear at the end of the show for worthy organizations doing things the right way, or you contribute to the free seminars that we're doing for first responders. So you'll get discounts to our coaching products and webinars and all the rest. So we would be happy to have you a part of the team and also happy to answer your questions. So with that being said, we'll call it a night, and you'll hear from us next week whenever we have Move Week. So until we talk next week, remember to serve others, but pay yourself. Goodbye for now.
Bye.
Bye.
The Fuel, Move, Recover podcast is the product of Advancing Athletics, LLC. You can follow us on Instagram at Fuel, Move, Recover and Facebook at Advancing Athletics. This podcast is funded by our members at fuelmoverecover.com. Their membership is matched with free seminars on performance and wellness for underserved municipalities in Ohio and beyond. Come join the FMR family to improve your well-being while supporting others. The following departments and charities are the shout-outs of our patrons with Protect and Serve memberships. The Gary Sinise Foundation, the Stark County Sheriff's Office, the Task Force Dagger Foundation, Veterans Outdoor Foundation, and the Woonsocket, Rhode Island Police Department.